Okay. So my mother was a hanky queen. When hanky meant a thing of cloth, not paper tissues bought in packs from late night garages and shops, but things for waving out of trains and mopping the corners of your grief. When hankies were material, she'd have one always up her sleeve. Okay. What is this about? What idea does this give? She was a hanky queen. What do you think she means by that?
I guess like that statement is kind of like it has like humor to it in the poem.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's lighthearted. Maybe it's like a nickname for
Mm-hmm.
her.
Yeah. So, very right. A humorous and maybe a lighthearted um description of uh her mother and yeah, okay. So she's looking again. This is in the past. We see that this is in the past, so we know that this is going to be again nostalgia. Okay, all right. And so the speaker is looking back at the past over here. And okay, what else? What else? Any more analysis?
Uh, it's like kind of like
Hmm.
childlike, the hanky queen part.
Okay, so childlike, yes, fine. Um, um, they're also referring it as something more valuable back in the days.
Uh-huh.
Hanky meant a thing of cloth, not paper tissues bought in packs from late night garages and shops.
Yeah.
So, before back in the time that the time that she's referring to is that was when hanky it meant something rather more valuable, and it wasn't really something that could be bought in cheap stores or in late night garages and shops. This perhaps is this we see that there is imagery around the hanky of the past is quite different. Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
hanky of the past is quite different. We see that it was something rather more. Let me write this neatly, one sec. So we see imagery. Hankies in the past were valuable. They were not just available at a regular store.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, let's see. Let's move forward and see if she what she actually means when with this handkerchief. So tucked in the wrists of every cardie, a mum's embarrassment of lace, embroidered with a weave for weave, spittled and scrubbed against my face, and sometimes more than one fell out, as if she had a farm up there, where dried up hankies fell in love and mated, raising little squares. So, what do we see happening over here?
Uh, the upper sleeve part.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's like
Okay.
you know that there's like a or already made like idiom. So
Yes.
that also kind of goes back to like the humorous
Mm-hmm.
the in the poem, and when she says like, oh, they're like mating with raising little squares, that's I guess like maybe it's like a childlike idea that she had when she was younger, and like the sense that her mom is always carrying one with her, or she always has one at hand.
Mm-hmm.
Or like
Okay.
that shows the significance of the handkerchief.
Okay. Um, Also the fact that it also shows that she is, because she also talks about how it's spittled and scrubbed against my face. Also talks about how her mother always looked out for her. She always had one ready just in case, always perhaps ready and prepared, and also a symbol that she looked out for her. What is it that you said about the raising little squares?
Uh, I said that it's probably like an idea that she had when she was younger, again going back to like this childlike innocence, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, it also like suggests that she's always has one with her, like no matter the situation.
Okay. All right. Um, okay. You also may need should over here, if you see there's some exaggeration over here. So we do see that. And then we also see raising little squares. So if we make a connection of this, she is actually trying to say, and yes, it's more of a humorous way again of her saying that it could be as if she had a farm up there and raising little squares, as if it was, these handkerchiefs were having little children, little squares, as in little children up in her sleeve. So this was more of a humorous um approach as well, where she's referring to is as if the handkerchiefs were having children over there, as in they were multiplying in numbers. There was multiple in numbers, and the supply was pretty much never ending for her. And also look at the part embroidered with "we for big." This is also a very personal piece of information where the story rather feels a lot more real, and it helps us to understand that her mother loved handkerchiefs and really valued them,
Yeah.
right? And okay, hmm. So um, and the little phrase that we just focused on, the raising little, I don't know why I keep saying rising, little squares, is it's focusing on the shape. Also, rather something as more, you know, a more, because back in the days, in the traditional manner, these they were, uh, always in a square. And this is perhaps her referring to how she would always carry them in an old-fashioned manner. Okay, right? So this particular part is where she is talking about how um, as if the uh, handkerchiefs mated and loved and reproduced more handkerchiefs over there, right? So she bought her own. Any questions on this passage, on this stanza,
Hmm.
or anything you want to add?
Oh, no, no.
Okay. Um, she bought her own. I never did. Hankies were presents from distant aunts. Um, in boxed sets with transparent covers, a script initials, spelling fonts. The naffest Christmas gift you'd get, my brothers too, more often than not, got male ones serious and grey and larger like they had more snot. Okay. So what are your analysis of this part of the she's giving a lot more meaning to it now. It's becoming more sentimental and of more value.
Yeah.
How
And
so? Yeah.
I in this part, she shows a little bit of like perspective. Like, she says she bought her own, I never did. So her mother was the one that mainly had it, and she never
Mm-hmm.
really saw, I guess, like the point of having one. Which this can show like the generational gap and like the generation
Okay, very nice.
between the two, and you know, she references like distant aunts. So we like at this point, this is like I think this is the first time we see like other families being mentioned, because I think like
Mm-hmm.
throughout the poem there is no father present. So
Yeah.
uh, or there's no mention of a father. So I'm guessing that she was raised by uh only her mother.
Mm-hmm.
And like when she says my brothers too, they would get more they got male ones, so like serious and gray, and larger ones. So I guess that kind of juxtaposes to how her mom's would look like, you know, like with lace and embroidered uh like letters on it or whatever. So that kind of shows like the differences gender wise as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Absolutely. So some gender, the fact that they were serious and gray, and they got male ones, like they were larger. So gender over here as well. And it also mentions that she got some from her distant aunts as a gift from her aunts. And she didn't, because the fact that she describes them as toughest Christmas gift you'd get, this perhaps shows the word nafist is describing how her aunts have lack of taste, perhaps, like they couldn't think of any better Christmas present. And this shows that she doesn't like them as much as her mother does, or values them as much as her mother does, right?
Do you mean like her siblings or
No, 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 the hankies, because she
oh
also
right.
gets them. She also gets them from her distant aunts on Christmas presents, right? And she described them as the toughest Christmas gift you'd get. So she doesn't really like the present, the Christmas present that she's getting here.
Uh,
She describes it as toughest, like they're, totally old-fashioned and they lack style, and it, it also kind of shows that she back in the time she wasn't really eager to perhaps celebrate Christmas as well.
yeah.
um we can see that in the second half of the stanza, when, like, you talked about her brothers, and uh, she describes how it wasn't just her who got them. So there are some serious and gray ones, um and it is this the fact that she also adds as if like they had more snot. For her, a handkerchief is just a piece of um material, because it's in her eyes is just it's just very general piece of cloth that holds no value than just blowing your nose in it. So for in her perspective, so you could perhaps see that as her as a child, she do not have much value for this product, for this material. So for her it was just a piece of material, and the fact that for her it's just piece of cloth, not to save or keep, but to, blow your nose, and this is what it's worth. That's what it's worth for her, right? So, in her perspective, perhaps it's more like that. And something that you pointed out, I really liked, which does definitely highlight over here, is the generation gap and how things are more valuable to others than it is for her mother. It's very valuable, but for her it's just a piece of material. It was Hankey that closed department stores with headscarves, griddles, knitting wools, and trouser presses, homely props. You'd never find today in malls hankies which demanded irons and boiling to be purified, shuttered the doors of family stores when those who used to buy them died. Okay, so what do we see over here? What is she referring to?
Uh, when she talks about like the listing here about like the closed department stores with headscarves and so on, she kind of like describes this lost world in a way, because like I'm guessing like these stores began to fade and disappear later on in her life,
Okay.
and like the part where she says you'd never find today in malls, so that also shows the differences between uh maybe her and her kids, like
Okay.
department stores, she might have grown up with it, but now that she has her own kids, she's used to going to malls, or like it's showing like that times have changed, you know?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so for her more these are not available at these malls and your markets. Also shows that everybody perhaps believe that, they just, the demand perhaps for the product itself, it died out just like the people did. So um it
Yeah.
it became an outdated fashion, and people were more into other things, right?
Yeah.
um yeah. And I think there is one more stanza. Maybe it was on the other page, I didn't take a screenshot. um Yeah, but yeah, so anything else you want to add in this stanza? It was a hanky that closed department stores with headscarves, griddles, knitting wool, and trouser presses you'd never find today in malls. Hankies which demanded irons and boiling to be purified, shuttered the doors of family stores when those who used to buy them died. Yeah, so she is perhaps highlighting how outdated, yeah, the fashion has become, and people don't really find them and of much value, and they're rather more now available at late night garages than in proper stores, right?
Yeah.
So they hold of no value. Yes, there's more stanzas. I'll just take a screenshot and add to this thing. Oh, okay. It's why can't I take a screenshot? I could take a screenshot right here. Why can I not now? Moving forward, let's go to stanza 5. Stanza 5. Okay, and somehow with the hanky's lost, greengrocer's George with his dodgy foot and for delivering wedge from comma van is history, and the friendly butcher who would slip and extra sausage in, the fishmonger whose marble slab of haddock smoked the color of yolks and parceled rows of local crab. Okay, so here she's we see a theme of nostalgia.
Yes.
Okay, okay. What else?
Uh, we get like mentions of other people like the friendly butcher and um who else? Oh, the greengrocer George. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess in like plot wise, this is probably people that she knew. Like it seems like kind of like a local town thing, you know, like when you'd go into a store, maybe like the person will recognize you and be like, "Oh, I know your order," and then they'd fill it in for you. Um, I guess that also kind of describes another aspect of this lost world again, like that idea. Um,
Mm-hmm.
as you know, like shopkeepers would know their customers well, and maybe like the environment or the community was very different um compared to now, because
Okay.
now because I guess now like
So,
to a mall and it would be different to the other mall that you're going to with the same coffee shop or something, you know. Yeah, I guess like now there's a lot of everything.
okay. And also look at how she has a name for everyone.
Yeah.
Uh, Greengrocer George with his dodgy foot delivering wedge from a comma van. Friendly butcher and also like you said, who would slip an extra sausage. So yes, perhaps she had a relationship and with all of these people. Perhaps this was the town she grew up in, and everybody knew her, and they used to give her favors and just mean everybody was perhaps nice around her, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so when we see the transition over here, we do see that, when in the previous stanza where she talks about how the handkerchiefs are out of date. It focuses on nostalgia. She's looking back on her life and she's connecting it to her the transitional handkerchief, this was perhaps another element of her childhood that she also looks at from her past. Um, just like her childhood disappeared, just how the handkerchief and its fashion disappeared. Um, just like that, the Commonwealth history, the friendly butcher. She's just talking about how things have changed, and um, she is perhaps looking back to how everything is just, become past.
Yeah.
Um, she's all maybe grown up now, right? And she's referring to her personal relationships, like you mentioned, in a small town, perhaps a community which was a lot more friendlier than you would perhaps find and around, right? Okay, lay opposed the dancing school where Mrs. White with painted talons thought as when you're smiling from a stumbling out of tune piano, step together, step together, step together, point. The annual talent show, when every mother fencing tears would whip a hanky from their sleeve and smudge the rouge from little dears. Okay, all right. Um, Here we see it getting more sentimental, holding a lot more value. The handkerchief has perhaps seen a lot of memories. Yeah.
Yeah.
We see the material itself, the handkerchief, it we see it holding more value over here. She's thinking about her past again from her school, her annual talent show, and how the handkerchief always was there for them to wipe their tears. And again, the handkerchief becomes, because it's the annual talent show, which perhaps shows that it was traditional, and for mothers to come and see them at the talent show was also traditional, and
Yeah.
having a handkerchief was also traditional, right? So perhaps making a connection there with the handkerchiefs. Yeah. What do you want to add over here?
Um, oh, the part where
Nostalgia. Yeah.
teacher was trying to like keep them coordinated, uh and like they kind of like fail during the process, like when the mothers are fencing tears, uh
Mm-hmm.
the children are out of step. they're they're out of step, so I'm guessing that could like symbolize a society that is also out of step, that's like faded, that's that's like moving apart from the rest.
Okay. What do you
uh
mean by that? I didn't quite catch that.
okay, so the part where here it says, where Mrs. White with painted talons taught us, when you're smiling from a stumbling out of tune piano, step, step, oh, step together, and so on. The dance teacher is kind of like trying to make coordinate movements, and they stumble, and there's an out of tune piano. So I'm guessing that that could symbolize like the lost world, or like the lost society, with two different generations moving apart from each other. um like uh, they're not coincided, like one is fading and one is being brought up, if that makes sense. There's
Okay, yes.
the words, kind of. So I'm guessing that that's what it symbolizes.
Okay, yes. And if we also look at, we can also kind of see that Mrs. White holds a lot of value to her, maybe because she was the one who taught them to smile, right? She taught us when you're smiling from stumbling. So she is also, holds importance in her life. Perhaps the fact that she mentions her with her name in the poem, and maybe someone who taught her to smile.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is that a
Um, Pardon?
uh oh, my teacher said that the part where she says, taught us when you're smiling, is that like a reference to a song? Because I mean, I've never heard of the song, but
Okay. Let
my
me see. When you're smiling from
by
a
Michael Bublé.
stumble, is it a song?
Oh yeah, by I'm pretty sure it was Frank Sinatra or Louis Armstrong.
Okay. Oh, it's a song. Okay. So again, perhaps she was the one who taught them to perhaps to dance to tunes,
Yeah.
to to have a nice time, to you know coordinate, step together, right? Again, she still holds value to her um in her life. Perhaps that could be the reason why she mentioned her in the poem.
Yeah.
Moving forward, nostalgia only makes me old. The innocence I want my brood to cling on to like 10 bob notes was killed in TV lassitude, and it was me that turned it on and eat bought biscuits I would bake, and if I'd commit to being home. Okay, so what do we see here again? So we've seen nostalgia going from the last three stanzas, and perhaps a major theme of this poem. Um, she's looking back at her past and looking at how good it was. And in the time she didn't appreciate um, her, the good parts of her lives, I guess. And now she feels old and the innocence is also gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What else?
Um, this like stanza kind of shows how she wants to replicate the style of mothering that her own
Mm-hmm.
mother did. Like this one line where she says, "And it was me that turned it on and eat bought biscuits I would bake if I'd commit to being home." So I guess like this is kind of showing the how the speaker is torn. She wants to kind of like give the same childhood to her children that she had, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
wants,
yeah.
yeah. So she wants to do that, and um, but she can't because I'm guessing like she's working and she doesn't have the she doesn't have the resources or the time to do the same things that her mother did because she has to go
Mm-hmm.
to work and she can't stay home all the time. So she puts on the TV and she lays out biscuits and so on. So yeah, so I'm guessing like this might be like a sense of maybe guilt that she can't uh raise her children the same way that she wanted that she wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it also shows how admirable her mother's style of parenting is.
Mm-hmm.
Much more.
Yes. Yeah. Her mom did. Perhaps we see some remorse, um, some guilt. Um, she is admiring her mom. Um, she also misses her, um, she also feels remorse about how she didn't enjoy much of her childhood. And um she's yeah, so was killed in TV lassitude, and it was me that turned it on and eat bought biscuits I would bake. So yeah, it is draining and it is wearing, and she's comparing her own parenting style of her parents and how the very different life her children have than she did. um Definitely, yes. So the focus is on how cannot raise her, so her children have a different life than her. So that's also true, yes. Um, there's never hanky up my sleeve. I raised neglected looking kids. Okay, we see remorse here, and there's never a hanky up my sleeve. I raised neglected looking kids, the kind of whose noses strangers clean. What awkwardness in me forbids me to keep tissues in bag when handy packs are 50p. I miss material handkerchief. They're soft and hidden history. Okay, now we see her perspective completely change for the material, right? We we also see a rhetorical question here.
Yeah,
Um where she's asking herself, she's wondering, how does she not buy a packet of 50p tissues to keep in her bag? And and then we also look at the awkwardness is there that prevents her from doing this because she can't figure it out. It's related to her inability and in her mind to give up the idea of keeping handkerchiefs and carrying a packet of tissues with her. So she is kind of stuck in the middle of her tradition and the world moving forward. That is the next second part of the poem, the stanza. But this part is a real, uh, you know, um, focus where she notes that, unlike her youthful days where her mother really looked out for her, she sees herself as a neglectful mother
Yeah.
versus herself as a neglectful mother. The handkerchief that held no value for her is now making her feel that it's something that she cannot give up. The history, it's difficult for her to give it up, right? And and the fact that she is saying that her children are neglected and then the noses are cleaned by strangers is also a metaphor as to how one would she would she sees herself as a neglected person and how strangers are looking out for her children, right? Anything you want to add to this stanza?
Um, no, not really.
Okay. Um, moving forward. Okay. But it isn't mine, now let it go. My mother too, eventually, who died not leaving handkerchief but tissues and uncertainty. And she would say, should I complain of the scratchy and disposable, that this is your material to do with, daughter, what you will. Okay. So she's in the final stanza. She speaks of the material again, and then she knows that she eventually has to let go of it, and she talks about how it's something she shouldn't be clinging on to because it's not something for her to cling on to. It's something that belonged to her mother. Yeah, you want to add anything?
Um, for the last stanza, um,
Mm-hmm.
oh, the part where it's like uh italics, um, I guess is that like the part where her mother's voice is talking? So
Okay.
I'm guessing like this part in terms of like the story, I'm guessing her mother gave her a handkerchief. So she
Okay.
said that this is your material. Going back to the idea that like handkerchiefs are just like pieces of fabrics, to do with daughter what you will. Um, I guess it's showing like the reality of the older woman's personality and like what the handkerchief means to her.
Okay. Right.
And in this
Mm-hmm.
stanza, I'm guessing like she's like come to terms with it. Like she's accepted the changes around her in society uh and the changes in the style of mothering as well. Like yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So we see over here in this part, we see that, the poem kind of it's kind of becoming more solemn in these specific lines where she's addressing her um mother's death,
Yeah.
and and then she says but she did not leave handkerchief but tissues and uncertainty. So it's her mother ended up, her mother was kind of who finally also turned towards the 50p kind of tissues, and she also, like you said, she came to terms with it, that the handkerchiefs were now outdated, and um she also gave up the handkerchiefs, and you know when she said that this is your material, to do with daughter what you will. In a wider context, the handkerchief and the tissue paper is used to symbolize life in a way that, when as the choices we have to make when we grow old, and we it kind of represents how one chooses to live, and how we let go of the past. We
Mm-hmm.
have to let go of the past eventually, and we have to start, and only if we let go of the past is when we start living in the present.
Yeah.
And you know um it's perhaps it's symbolizing um theme of age, life, death, tradition. Everything pretty much sums up over here of um age, life, death, and tradition. Okay, so the ending, perhaps the last two lines, were a great focus on, um, the actual meaning behind the poem, the deeper meaning as to you have to let go of the past to move on to the future, or to the present rather, right?
Yeah.
So we see that the theme is more of, nostalgia and loss. We see constant nostalgia of her looking into the past in her old town, her mother losing her mother, and we see a generational change. We see motherhood and how she feels that in the new generation she's failed to be a good mother as her own mother was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and yeah. So this is it for the poem, the analysis. Okay. So tomorrow perhaps we could do our own comparison of the poem that we did today and the one we did yesterday. Okay? And we'll also look at the structure of the poem tomorrow. Yeah?
Okay. Yeah.
The rhyme, the half rhyme, the full rhyme and all.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because there's a lot of repetition, there's a lot of alliteration, there's enjambment of, we'll do the separate analysis for that. Okay? So I'll see you tomorrow for more of material. Okay?
Okay. Thank
All
you.
right, I'll see you. Bye bye.